Hi, dear listeners. This is Oshaya, your host. If you love our show, I have a favor to ask. Could you kindly leave us a review on iTunes and Apple Podcasts? Your reviews go a long way in helping us do better, and we read every single one of them. I thank all of you in advance for leaving those reviews. Enjoy.
And I said, hey, bro, I have this project and, I want us to work on it together. And he looked at it and said, okay, I can do this. It's very interesting. This is how much I'm going to pay. And I said, hey, bros, I don't have money to give you. Let's be partners. We pretty much just started Cash Envoy with nothing. It was just 2 of us.
My father told me life is not a bitter road.
This is Origins Africa podcast, where we explore the origin stories of people who have made and are making their dreams come true, asking the what, the when, the how, and the why. I'm Oshaya, and on this episode, Olaoluwa Awojoodu shares his origin story. 10 years of pushing, fighting, and near give-up moments before his dreams started to bear fruit in 2016. Olaoluwa is the co-founder and CEO of eSettlement Limited, one of the topmost agent banking platforms in Nigeria. On our very first episode with Abolore Salami as guest, Salami had talked about how he had been greatly influenced by his friend, Olaoluwa Awojoodu, in his entrepreneurship journey. In fact, at the end of the episode, Salami had specifically asked that we interview Olaoluwa next. We also got commentaries from some of you, our dear listeners, on how you'd like to hear Olaoluwa's origin story. We listened to you, and here we are. Olaoluwa's story speaks of resilience, persistence, and unstinting commitment to a dream that took a decade, 10 solid years to bear fruits, 10 years of being alone on the journey and no one believing in his dream. Even his parents had given up on him. 10 years of staying true to the course, pushing and fighting one day at a time with nothing but the deep conviction that he had to succeed before finally breaking through in 2016. It begs the question of how many of us would be that patient and persistent in the pursuit of our dreams. Today, Olaoluwa's company, eSettlement Limited, has become one of the topmost agent banking platforms in the country, processing about 3 billion naira transactions daily. Olaoluwa describes his childhood as decent, having grown up in a middle-class family.
I guess it was decent. Middle-income family, parents, civil servants.
He attended a missionary primary school and went to a federal government secondary school and university.
I went to public schools, which, right now, our kids can go to public schools. But even when I say public, so my primary school, as an example, was Catholic at Ikeja, Maryland. And then so I went to a Catholic primary school, and then I went to a federal secondary school, and I went to a federal university, so more or less public schools all through. But right now, I'm not sure that those schools are, they are still maintaining the same standard for the current generation, like my kids. I don't really see them going to those kind of schools, even though at that time, it was pretty decent. So yeah, it was really just an average, decent growing up experience. Primary school was very, very sweet. All the primary school memories I had, I don't think there was any bad one. It was all good, all true. And secondary school was, life-changing. It was budding. So you get to experience new things. You get to make friends. Some of those friends I keep to date, some not. But, it was pretty decent. And then, sometimes you get to break some laws, get into trouble, get flogged every now and then. Yeah, it was fine. And then university, of course, I finished from Obafemi Awolowo University. I read computer science and engineering. I wasn't really, by then I'd already decided what I wanted to do in my life anyway. So I wasn't the most the most serious guy in class, or like the guy that took his academics very seriously.
That was in the university?
That was in university, correct, yes. Because by then, I already started doing business. And I already knew that, I wanted to start a big company, and I was passionate about, building a future outside of, what they were teaching in school. Because let's be honest here, if you think well about, for instance, I was an engineering student, and sometimes I think about some of those things that I learned in school. Take, for instance, the YDX, if you ever did calculus. And, today I run a technology company, and I still wonder what were we supposed to use that stuff for? What was the value of learning how to do the YDX, and so many other things like that, because I kind of figured out that to be successful in life, there are certain skills that you need, which I like to tell maybe like 5 things. So you need one, you need to be able to read, you need to be able to add, subtract, divide, multiply, and most importantly, you need to be able to communicate effectively. Those are the core skills that are required to be successful, and even if you don't go to school, which it has been proven so many times in developed countries like the US, a lot of the billionaires, they are always dropouts, high school, nobody finishes university, because you don't really need those skills to be successful. And that's the truth. So, but because of my own environment, even though I felt like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, I'm going to start businesses, I'm going to do this and that, because of the Nigerian environment, Nigeria, we don't drop out. Or like if you drop out, that is like you've committed a great crime. So we go to school over here, and we go to school like full time. Abroad as well, people go to school and work. Nigeria, we are supposed to go to school and go and cram. So you're expected to be in school. So I went through the whole education, the BSc, bachelor's, to just make sure that, I have a degree. But even despite that period of being a student, I was, starting businesses and running businesses and getting experience.
As a young boy, Olaoluwa had a dream to become the richest man in the world. And he quickly began reading about the world's richest men.
I was inspired a lot by the stories of rich people. And, so what I used to do, my early years, immediately we had access to internet, I was always trying to read up on Forbes. Even before the internet, I had books about the richest men in the world, and trying to read up on their stories.
How did you get the books?
Only was, I remember actually just one book in particular. I don't know, my dad used to have a lot of books. I can't actually remember. Maybe it was one of my dad's books. I can't remember. But, there was a book I read that had a lot of, rich guys back then. It was really not, I can't remember the name, but it was maybe like 2 pages each on this billionaire and that billionaire. And I was really interested by their stories, especially how did they actually make it, which is why I also appreciate what you're doing, because especially in Nigeria, a lot of guys are rich. And as Nigerians, because of what our culture and what, because of the way things are right now, people celebrate the fact that they're rich, not even trying to understand how did they become rich, So we find out a lot in Nigeria. Someone is dead ass broke today, and then tomorrow he's like a multi-millionaire, and all of a sudden you start hailing him, hey, chairman, and without even finding out what did he do, how did he move from 0, to 100. And for me, I always tell people that are close to that, I'm never impressed by how rich you are. What I really want to find out is, how did you make money? I know, because another thing is that if you say this man is rich and you say, what does he do? It doesn't really answer the question, because once you are rich, you can do things. You can put the money somewhere, turn it around there to create more money. So the story of what is the rich person doing is not as interesting as how did they become rich, because how did they become rich is the story that makes all the difference. So, and that's why I also appreciate what you're doing as well. But, so I was inspired by a lot of stories of, people getting rich, like of Bill Gates and, the people that were famous back then. And also even before then, I read stories of some other guys from previous generations, like Rockefeller, the Vanderbilts, and people like that, just trying to understand, how those people more or less, were able to influence the world and, create value.
So what did you find out from your readings? Oh,
number one. So the important thing is this. Number one is you need to create value. You need to create value. I don't want to say a lot of negative things about Nigeria, because I actually like my country. But Nigeria is one of the few places in the world where you can actually become rich without creating any value. You just need to be someone's friend or know the right people, and boom, you are rich, without actually creating any value. But the normal theory for capitalism is that one person's desire, his own strive to change his life, and that whole process of changing his own life, it would create value, and that value will trickle down and impact either from his employees to an extent to impact the nation. So what you have is someone has a fantastic idea, and then he is able to create value that people are willing to pay for, and through that process, you get to have a lot of people employed. It creates jobs, and then the people that he has employed too, we have people that are working for them, and the value just trickles down across the whole ecosystem, and that is what capitalism is based on. But the reverse, what we find in Nigeria in some cases, is that I just know someone, and I just got this contract. You have someone that made $1 billion off a deal and has 2 or 3 employees. That really is not. It doesn't usually work that way. If you are going to have $1 billion in revenue, you should at least have maybe 20, 30 people working for you. So because you need people to help you create that value, people to buy into your vision and things like that. But so I early on I understood the impact of, I need to create value. I look at people and I say, my money is in your pockets. I need to be able to give you something to get my money that is in your pockets from you. That kind of idea. So it was all about, what can I sell that people are willing to buy? So that was it for me.
So the true test of value is that people must be willing to pay for it.
Definitely. And that is very, very critical. And I still tell a lot of employees today, a lot of entrepreneurs. I have some entrepreneurs that I do mentor as well. And I let them know that, hey, sometimes I have this fantastic idea, and, I feel like this thing is so fantastic and it's going to change the world, and, it's going to become something really big. I tell them that is what you think. But the truth is that you really don't have anything till you get into the market. When you get to the market decides what they want to pay for. Your job is just to be able to listen to the market, and be able to tweak your product in whatever way you can realize that, the market is willing to pay for this. So it's really just about what are you offering, and what is the market willing to pay for. And I think the common term today is called product market fit. So that's, you have the product and the market. Yeah.
Okay. And how old were you when you found this out, that the pathway to being the richest man is to create value?
I would have, off the top of my head, I would say maybe around 17, 18. That was my early years in university. And
okay.
So I already made up my mind that for me to be rich and wealthy, the way I want to be wealthy in my life, I cannot be an employee. Because I realized that no matter how rich you how much money you get working for an oil company, working for a telco, working for, even though a lot of those guys are really, really comfortable, I was not ready to settle for that. I wanted that time was the Bill Gates rich. I wanted that Bill Gates rich, and it wasn't by being an employee. You had to be the founder, to get to that level.
Okay, and even till today, you still hold that belief that employees can't exactly be as rich as a founder?
Which is it's not that I hold the belief, which is actually the truth, So you need to be the creator before you can actually be that wealthy. So I'm not saying employees can't be richer. There are a lot of employees that are even richer than I am. Like a lot of them. It just depends on where you work. You're in an oil company, you are maybe you're a top guy in the bank. Definitely you're like way, way, way richer than I am. But the point I'm trying to make is that the kind of wealth that I am chasing, that I was chasing, and I'm still chasing anyway, is that type where, is more or less, you have no boundaries. You don't get there by being an employee. And I think that part of the problem that we've had over time as a nation as well is that a lot of our parents have misguided us, because what happens usually from time to time is that something that works in this generation does not necessarily work in the next generation. So take, for instance, the era of, let's say, my parents. I would be saying maybe the 60s, the 50s, maybe part of the 70s as well, but 50s, 60s especially. The rule then was that to be successful as a Nigerian, all you have to do is go to school and do well with your studies. Once you can do well in your studies, you graduate with a fantastic degree, there will be so many companies waiting to employ you. And that is just the beginning of your success. You can go abroad, go and study, just get to a decent school, be the most hardworking guy, the guy that is reading the most, and like your life is made. And I'm telling you, that was the formula that cracked it in the 50s and the 60s and that era. So all those guys that were top performers in their class, I don't want to call names, but there are a lot of big men in Nigeria today that they grew up in that era, and it was simply by, when they are reading their synopses or whatever, you see that, you graduated here, did this year, got this degree here, got this degree there. That thing worked at that time. And that generation passed that information down, saying, my child, all you need to do to be successful in life is get into a good school. Reach out, read with everything that you have, study hard, work hard. And once the results come out, and you excel, you're definitely going to get a good job. And that is the beginning of the success of your life, more or less. So, a lot of people from the previous generation have passed out that information to the current generation. But the truth is that the rules are changed, but they didn't know. So right now, the truth is that the fact that you go to school, and I know people that even have MSc, like they go to school, BSc is not enough, they go MSc, everything. They're still looking for work because the jobs are not there anymore. So the rules have changed. Meanwhile, the message has not changed, So now it's not about going to school and studying and reading. It's more about what can you offer? What are you good at? And a lot of people that I see even today that are looking for work, it's not because, it's because they are finished school. It's actually because of, what their parents told them. So they finished school, they've read a good course, and now they're like, okay, I'm done. What is next? And don't forget that, the way we go to school in Nigeria, at least, which I'm sure of, is not really like at the age you're going to school, maybe 14, 15, you're getting to university. You don't really know what you want to do with your life. So your parents are just going to say, you be a good lawyer, go and read law. Or I want my son to be an engineer. I should have a son that is a doctor. You read medicine, which ideally may have nothing to do with your life, in that context. So people that, a lot of guys just finish school. So I've gotten the degree, like my parents said I should get a degree. Now I need someone to employ me. A lot of these guys, the problem is that there are so many people in that bucket that it now becomes difficult to get a job. Meanwhile, the girls that excel are those that finish and say, I'm really good in PR. I want to do PR because I'm really good in PR. Or I'm very good with numbers. I should be an accountant. Like people that actually know what they want and are able to deliver on what they want, they already have a specialty. So, because that's where life is turning into now. So you can come out and say, oh, I'm a good graphic artist. It's not something they even touch in school. It's just something that I know I'm good at. Or I'm a good developer, and then those are the people that, this is the time of people that know what they want to do with their lives, in terms of they've been blessed enough to discover what their talent is. And they can say, I want to do this because I'm good at doing this. And those are the guys that, it's always very easy to get a job for. Because even if you say, I'm looking for a job, someone just picks up the phone and say, I have one guy is a fantastic graphic artist, and automatically you see that sharp, that guy gets a job because he's actually good at what he does. It's not about, I have a guy, it's a different conversation when you call the guy and say, I have one aburo that is looking for work. He just finished economics. So what can he do? Nothing. So it's a different conversation entirely. But the message is, if the message had been different, to say you need to think about how you can create value to be successful in life, then I feel like generally the message changes. It's not about people that want to go to school and go and cram so that they can pass the exam and they can say, well, I graduated first class or whatever. The message then becomes the person is looking out to create value and how to impact, the nation in that sense. If you look at a lot of rich people globally, from the likes of Rockefeller to the likes of Vanderbilt, all those guys were doing, like, I didn't even know how to, the word to use. Just take, for instance, Vanderbilt. The guy was laying train tracks across the US. That is something that in Nigeria today, Nigeria is supposed to do. It's not something that one individual just comes up to say, I'm going to lay a track from this state to this state, and I'm going to build a bridge, and I'm going to, so my point is, people have to understand that I need to create value. And then in return, and the same thing even applies to employees, because employees too, wherever you're working, is really just about creating value. The amount of value you create in that workplace is supposed to be proportional to the returns that you get. It's not always proportional, but ideally, in an ideal world, it's supposed to be proportional to the value that you get. So that's why, of course, nobody's salary, people's salary are always the same. People's salaries are different because the value they're expected to create is supposed to be different. So it's really just, at the end of the day, it comes down to value creation.
Okay. And the starting point of value creation is self-awareness and knowing what you want.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Now, how did this impact on you choosing to study computer science and engineering? Did you know what you wanted at that point?
Of course not. Just like I said earlier, so my dad read computer science, and when you're filling the JAMB form in Nigeria, very, very few people at that age know what they want to go and study. So it's just going to be based on what the parents think makes sense for this child. And then you fill your JAMB form, and then if you pass the JAMB, in a lot of cases, your cutoff from the JAMB will determine where the university will put you. But it wasn't by choice. In fact, for so many years of my life as a computer engineering student, I thought I was wasting my time. From my part 1 to my part 4, honestly, Shay, I thought that I was wasting my time as a computer engineering student because I already knew that I wanted to be a businessman. I was already doing businesses and I was already making money. So it did not make sense that I was doing computer science and engineering. But then all that changed when I went for what we call IT internship. So as an engineering student, you are not in school for the whole of part 4 second semester. You're supposed to be doing your internship program, which means that you'll be working in the firm related to your field and then learn some real life experience. And I think that was what changed the whole concept for me, because when I did that IT in a technology firm, I kind of got exposed to my field in terms of computer science and engineering. And I realized that, wow, there is so much to be done here. There is so much value that I can contribute. There is so much, it wasn't until my part 4 internship program that I fell in love with my course. So that's very interesting. And then I was like, wow, I'm actually in the right field, which of course was a coincidence, but I'm actually in the right field. And it was really just about, I'm here now, and this is what I'm going to focus on as a business. Prior to that, all my other businesses had been, I'd run a chicken and chips business. I started a university newspaper. I'd run a phone booth business. So they've all been more like buying and selling. And then I used to sell laptops and things. So they've been more like, maybe buy and sell or, But this was the first time I realized that technology has massive potential, and I was in the right department, and I was going to do something on technology. It wasn't until my part 4.
At that point, since you hadn't exactly focused since 100 level, was it too late to go back to start learning what you had missed or hadn't paid attention to, or how exactly?
No. So it wasn't too late. It wasn't too late. The thing about school is that a lot of times in school, what you learn in school is not really practical. It's not something that you can actually practice. So as an engineering student, I did a lot of maths that I don't even know why they still call that the maths anyway, but because I used to be very good at maths, primary school, secondary school. And then when we started doing some very, very serious maths, engineering maths, it was, and I realized I wasn't good at maths, but sadly the name was still maths, but it was like a completely different level. But, the point is, you're learning all these things that really it has no practical use. I think that the things that have practical use, you really don't start learning them to maybe part 4, part 5. And even those, they're very, very limited. So I don't want to, say anything negative about my university, but at the same, I don't think I can remember more than 1 or 2 courses that I can feel like what I'm talking about now, I learned it in school. Maybe just 2 courses at the very most. Most of the other things you learn, on your own. So it wasn't too late. And also something else that didn't make it too late, which is something that I realized some years later, was this theory. I heard it from Bill Clinton. So I kind of read a lot. So it was from a Bill Clinton book. I can't remember the name of the book actually, but there was a phrase there that I used, which stuck with me. since then. The phrase says, he who knows why would always be the boss of he who knows how. Now, that just more or less explains it, that in order to do what I'm doing, I don't know how to write. I don't need to know how to write every line of code or how to know exactly, or everything to the every little bit and piece. All I just really need to understand is the why. And once I have the why, the how, all I need is just the basic knowledge so that nobody defrauds me. But if you understand the why, you would always get people that can come and build the how for you.
Interesting. So you run these different businesses in school. How did you get capital to start them?
So the very first business that I ran was the phone call business. So 2001, was between my part 1 and my part 2. There was this very long ASU break, and my friend and I decided to go into business. And GSM just came out then, so we said, hey, let's do phone calls. So we got, it was financed mostly. I got the SIM card we're using for the phone call was from my sister. She had gotten a SIM card, even though she didn't have a phone. I know back then, SIM card was way more expensive than phone. That was when GSM came out. SIM card was like 30K or something. So we're using my sister's SIM card. We bought a small Sergeant set. My cousin, she used to work in a bank then. She's relocated now. She was more or less our major financer. So she financed all the recharge cards we were selling. I think we had a 60-40 deal, so she brought in all the capital for the recharge card. It was mostly from my cousin for my very first business. And then the second business was financed.
What did you tell her, that she agreed to finance it?
Well, it was a partnership, so she was financing recharge cards that we're selling. So it was a phone call business, and the deal was that anytime we sold the recharge card, I think she was keeping 60% of the margin and we're keeping 40%.
So you just told her and then she agreed to the business and to the deal?
Yes, it was business and deal now. And so we were like, we're going to sell recharge card. We need, I can't remember how much now, but let's say 14,000 as an example. I think she gave us around 30K then, but we need like 14K as an example to buy recharge card. This 14K is going to buy 10 1,500 recharge cards as an example. And then this is how much we will make of it. And then you get to keep 60%, we keep 10%. So, and that was pretty much it. So she dropped the money. She was working in the bank. She dropped the money. And when we sell, I can't remember what the payments was like. I'm not sure. Maybe we're paying per pack or per whatever, but we'll give our money back, and then we'll give her the interest, and then we'll use the money to buy back the recharge card. So that was pretty much the beginning. And for most businesses as well, I like to tell people that, sourcing for finance is always like you have this very big ocean. And in that ocean, you have sharks, which are usually the VCs. But in that same ocean, you have the fishes as well, the smaller fishes. Always start with the fishes. So capital should never be a reason why you can't start a business. Never. So once you have the idea and you think you can execute, talk to your fishes, talk to your mom, talk to your brother, talk to your sister, talk to all those people, talk to one uncle, one neighbor, you should be able to get enough to kick off. And then, later, because a lot of people just say, oh, I don't have money, I can't start. It's not true. If you're passionate enough about the idea, all those things, the money will always come. So yes, my first business was financed by my cousin mostly. The next business was financed from the process of the first business and my brother. And then on and on and on. I read a book one time. It was by Ted Turner. Ted Turner was the founder of CNN, Cartoon Network, and a lot of stations. And he said that the first time in his life that he started the business without having enough capital to start it was CNN. Every other company, before CNN, he had a lot of companies. He used to sell billboards. Then later, he had like a chain of radio stations, But, all those businesses that he did, the very first business that he ever did, was starting off, there was no money. Or rather, he had money, but he didn't have enough money. But he just started anyway. That the first time he ever did that was when he was founding CNN. And to me, that was so surprising because I started a lot of businesses. And everyone, I never had capital. I just jump into it. And as I jump into it, the money starts coming. The money looks for me, more or less, and we're able to raise, for each need.
Didn't you have fears or doubts that it wouldn't work, or I don't know, were you just taking risk and you didn't have any fears at this young age, moving from one business idea to the next?
All right. So it's always very important if you want to be an entrepreneur. Well, a lot of people start in their 40s and 50s. But honestly, I think you have an advantage when you start young. You need to start young. When you're young, you have very, very little. Very, very, you are taking the risks you are taking is way, way, way much smaller. So what I mean is that I started my business at one point. I'd got into that level where I'd moved out of my parents' house. I was already doing bachelor. And then business was not making sense. It was not making money. I couldn't pay rent. And you know what I did? I packed my stuff and I moved back to my parents' house. My parents were happy to have me, by the way. They didn't want me to move out in the first place. But I moved back to my father's house, and I was eating for free and not paying rent. But I could only do that because of the age that I started. And, I had time. Right now, I am married. I have 2 kids. God forbid something goes wrong. I can't go back to my father's house. Do you understand? Because now I'm at that age where the risks I can take are now limited. I need to make sure that even if I want to take risks, certain things are taken care of. I need to think about, I'm going to pay school fees. I'm going to do all that. But when I was younger, like my 20s, I had those risks were not there, So I didn't care. I was ready to go all in and really just go all in, burn your bridges. And, I think I had the advantage of starting very, very young. At the age I am now, we'll say, oh, let's do something. You can't just throw it all away anymore. You need to start thinking about, am I going to take care of rent? Am I going to take care of, because I've gotten to that age now that I have a lot of responsibilities. But it wasn't always that way. So then I had so much more to risk. Or rather, I had so little to risk.
You didn't have any fears or doubts when you were launching those business ideas?
No doubts, no fears. Because as an entrepreneur, it's important that, first of all, you should have no doubts. Even when you have doubts, you need to talk yourself out of the doubts. Because being an entrepreneur, what that means is that the vision that you have, you need to be able to sell it. You cannot sell what you do not believe in. You will not sell it well. So you need to believe in what you're selling. And what that means to be able to believe it is that you first of all talk yourself out of the doubt. Whatever the doubt is, you will put it on paper. You try to understand why you have that fear, why you have the doubt, and talk yourself out of it to get rid of that doubt. Once you believe what you're doing and you're passionate about it, it becomes easier to sell to the people that are going to work with you. So yes, as an entrepreneur, you shouldn't have doubts. However, there is always fear as well, but I don't think life will be boring without the fear. So you do it despite. And that's actually the meaning of courage. So courage is, being able to take action despite the fear. Because courage is not like you don't have fear. You have fear, everybody has fears. But taking action despite the fear, that is courage. So what you need is, you need to be courageous.
Okay. So what did running these businesses back then in the university, what lessons did they leave you with? What are the key lessons you learned?
Yeah, so I like to say that all those businesses I started back then was more or less like my MBA, because it was like I was learning how to do business without going to business school, more or less. So my business school was very practical. A lot of things. But my first business eventually got messed up by family. Not my own family, my partner's family, because we had to go back to school. So we left it with charge. We put his cousin in charge in Lagos, and then we went back to Ife. So at that very time, I learned that, family can mess things up for you. The limits in terms of how many family members are in your business should be very, very, you should really watch it. Even till now, I try to enforce a bit of family to employee ratio in my office, because that's where people looking for work. So every time one uncle will say there's someone here looking for work, someone here looking for work. So you need to be, because if you just employ everybody, you're going to mess up your company. So you need to, I set a policy, I think is maybe one family allowed for every 30 employees. So so that way there's a bit of caution. And, you just don't employ family for the sake of employing family. You have to make sure that there's a need that the person is coming to solve. So I learned very early on, which all these things I'm talking about, the 1-in-30 ratio and all that, was mostly because I had experienced what family can do to your business, so I had to make sure that, I don't get into that trap again. So that is one. My newspaper business was very critical because that business was in fact, I think that I would maybe not be the person I am now, even not for that business, because when I was a student, I had 17 people writing for me. More or less, I had 17 employees. And this was just me being a student, So to understand the kind of work it took to manage 17 people, be responsible for 70 people as a student, So that at that time was like, it really gave me a lot of experience. So when I'm running a company, as a full-time company now, and I have 20 employees, 25 employees back then, it wasn't like a strange phenomenon for me. I'd had experience running already 17 people, so current staff strength now anyways is about 100. But I'd already experienced what it was like being able to manage a small team. But what I learned mostly from that business that I would never forget was that business for me was so tough. Like, it was so tough because we had a newspaper that came out every Thursday, or it didn't make every Thursday. It was supposed to come out every Thursday. But it took so much work for me. I practically worked from Friday to Wednesday to get that paper out on Thursday. And it was draining my blood. It was so much work doing everything because I was doing everything. I was rereading every line, making sure there was no errors. I was negotiating with the publishers. I was looking for art, traveling, looking for adverts in the newspaper. I did so much work. And I quickly learned, after the business didn't die. I think I went for IT, and I was so relieved that I stopped doing that business because it was drinking my blood. I was fatigued. And that is the concept today that is referred to as self-employed. What I did that time was I created employment for myself. I couldn't really think out of the business. I was the business, and the business could not exist outside of me. So I went through that time, and when it ended, I was so relieved, like, oh my God, that business was killing me. But the truth was, it wasn't even about the money, it was just the business was so much weight, and it was a few years later that I started thinking back and saying, what really happened in that business? And then I kind of figured it out. When you're going to do a business, you need to start thinking very early on how the business can exist outside of you. If you do not figure this out, you're going to just create employment for yourself and you really can't scale. But these are things that I learned that, very early on, you need to create a system. Even though you don't have any employees, just create a system and say, this is the role, this is this role, this is this role. And then even though you are the one occupying these 3 roles right now, that as time goes on, like, I'm bringing someone to come and take this role, someone else to take this role, just start creating that system, which I didn't create back then for the newspaper. But, I now learned it very early on. So when I was starting my business properly, or the businesses I started with, I already knew that, hey, there needs to be a system in place. I cannot.
So was this Click Store Africa?
No, this was actually Campus Weekly.
Okay. No, you mentioned that you had learned. So when you are now starting your businesses subsequently, so yes, the business you started subsequently, now was it Click Store Africa where you now put in place the lessons you learned from the weekly newspaper?
Click Store Africa, I did start it, but it never took off. So I wouldn't even, when I'm talking about the businesses I started, maybe I'll mention it, but I don't think it wasn't one that the business didn't kick off. So it will be more of the one after Click Store Africa, which was called Bottom Naira.
Okay. Please continue.
Yeah. By then I already knew that, hey, you can't create a business without creating structures. You're creating employment for yourself. And also, I think that part of the things that also helped differentiate me was from day one, I was already thinking about building a company. I don't know, but the best way I know how to explain the distinction is there's a difference between doing business and building a company. A lot of people mix it up, but it's not really the same thing. There are so many people out there that are doing business. I mean, I make shoes, so I'm selling shoes. I can even be, I'm a barber because I know how to cut hair. So I have a barbering salon. All those guys are doing business. That concept is completely different from starting a company. or building a company. When you're building a company, you're thinking more long term. You're thinking about, I need to create a business. I need to create a structure, So, and the vision really makes a lot of difference. Some people will think and be like, oh, because let's open a barber shop, because I'm a barber, I can cut it. That is a business. Now, a barbing company, or whatever, will think and say, hey, we need to open 20 barbing salons in Lagos. We are going to open in these local governments. We are going to have, this central management system. We are going to have, so the process of both, they sound like the same thing, but the process is completely different. So right from day one, when I wanted to, when I learned a lot, I already knew that what you're going to do is create a company. You're not doing this to do business. It's not about how much can I make now. It's about, I need to create structures that can make money. So those are part of the key things that I learned over time.
Okay. So you went for your IT, you returned, there was interest in tech. So which one came first? Was it Clicks to Africa or Bottom Naira?
It was Clicks to Africa. Clicks to Africa actually happened during my IT. So I was interning at Manifold Computers, and I think that the CEO was one of my early inspirations as well. When I met him, he just looked like the CEO that I wanted to be, and he used to live very close to the office. And while everybody's struggling and entering, trying to figure out how to get to work and get stuck in traffic, he just strolls to work. And then the driver drives the car, only the days that he has meetings. And, so I looked at him and I felt like, this is someone that I would like to be sometime in future. And even for me, till now, I've more or less embodied that. I work in Yaba, I live in Yaba. I can't, which was something that I solved with him first of all, because it just makes your life like a whole lot simpler. And so I already knew back then from my IT that when I do have my own company, I'm going to be living close to the office. It has to be, So, and then just general things that you see and you admire, and so it was one of those my very early inspirations as well. So I saw him and I knew that, I want to be a CEO. I wanted to be in this industry. By then I started and failed in maybe like 3 businesses. And it was just a calling for me. I knew that I wanted to get out there and I wanted to create value and I would get paid for my value creation. So it was more or less like a calling. It was what I wanted to do. I'm so passionate about creating stuff. I'm that kind of person that I need to just create it. I see what is not there. And a lot of people do that as well, which is what you call ideas. But my own strength actually is now executing, getting from I have an idea to the idea is life. I think that is one of my biggest strengths. And I'm able to make that come true. So after IT, during IT, I actually started Clicks to Africa, but we had the old website up. I had the company registered at CAC, but I think maybe we did 1 or 2 transactions. It never really kicked off. And then I got
So what was Clicks to Africa about?
It was supposed to be an online mall. Then there were no online malls. But I think the creation of Clicks to Africa, it was supposed to be everything, but I was starting with technology. So it was laptops, mostly laptops, phones. But it was more like an Amazon. But I didn't own Amazon back then. It was just an online store, really. However, Clicks to Africa actually led me to Bottom Naira because when I started Clicks to Africa, the key problem that I had with it was payment. I just realized that, making payments, enabling payments on the store it felt almost impossible. It was so expensive, to put that up there. And I thought about it and said, hey, I can't be the only one having this problem. This is something that needs to be solved, So Clicks to Africa was my first sign of there's something in payments that needs to be fixed. The second sign was when I go to school. This was now part 5, and everybody, more or less had laptops. My part 1, nobody had laptop, maybe just me. But by part 5, the whole school had laptop, and people had started browsing the internet, and there were a lot of things that people wanted to pay for, and they couldn't pay because we didn't have our normal debit cards that we have today. all we had then was one card called InterSwitch card. It was a magnetic stripe card.
What year was this?
And this was 2005, 2006, 2005, 2005. So what we had was the InterSwitch card, a max stripe cards. You can't really, if at all you want to use it online, you're only going to use it on InterSwitch websites. You can't say, oh, I saw this thing on this foreign site, or I want to pay for it. You couldn't really pay for anything. So that was the second call to payment. And I knew that there's really something missing in payment. And I felt like I could solve it. And that was the beginning of my journey into payment. And I haven't looked back since 2005, 2006. I'm still in payment.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, because now there's the whole financial technology, which is called fintech. So it's more expanded. But that was the beginning of my journey into the industry.
Okay. So this was 2005, 2006. So what happened next?
Yes. So I did start Bottom Naira. Bottom Naira, the concept was very easy. You go to an online store, www.bottomnaira.com. If you find anything that you want to buy online, you just copy out the link, paste it on a URL, write some comments, write the amounts, and you submit. And then we'll get back to you, tell you how much you're going to pay us in Naira. And then we'll make the payment for you. Now, note that these were for foreign products. So things like you wanted to pay for, maybe you wanted to buy antivirus, you wanted to pay for your software, you wanted to pay for school fees, whatever you wanted to pay. It wasn't like a Nigerian thing, it was a foreign solution. So we're helping connect that gap, We'll pay whatever you want to pay and we're charging 10%. So 10% of that commission. So you want to pay for something, $200, you pay $220, we keep $20. And then you will make the payment for you. However, Bottom Naira could not scale because I did it in partnership with a friend, and my friend was doing his master's in the UK then. So he was the guy paying with his foreign card, but I was collecting the cash in Naira. And this area where I was talking about is not like it's not like the guy had no access to his local account here. It was just bottom finish. So what was happening was that as I was collecting Naira from people that wanted to pay in school, I was paying the Naira into his bank account in Nigeria here. But he had no access to it back then.
Okay.
So it was more or less paying from the funds that he had in UK. And this guy was a guy that was a student. He was doing his master's. He was working like 2 jobs. He was struggling to make ends meet, in the UK. And all of a sudden, he had to be paying for requests that we had. And we had a lot of requests because, back then, marketing in school was not that difficult. I printed a lot of A4 papers. Every department back then had these notice boards. And I was just paste on the notice board, say, you want to pay for anything online, contact, blah, blah, blah.com. So I pasted the A4 paper all around school. So I had people with interest. I had people that had things to pay. And then we paid some and we started having issues. We couldn't pay everything because it used to be broke. And it got to that stage where people were looking for me. I was avoiding them because I'd collected Naira from a lot of people and I couldn't make payments for them, So I used to run around, avoid people, and then one day I just add it up to here, this is it, man. It can't work like this, So I started returning people's money. It was painful, but I did it because of my peace of mind. Because at that time there was no peace of mind anymore. People were looking for me, So I started returning people's money, and after I did, that was more or less the end of that business. That was the end of Bottom Naira, but I knew that people were willing to pay me for this. I have to be in payment. People were actually paying me for this. So I knew that, payments, I'm going to be here. I just need to figure out how to solve this problem. And that was what led to the creation of Cash Envoy. Cash Envoy eventually launched 2009, but it's a product that I've been working on since 2007. Yeah. So just immediately after Clicks to Africa, Bottom Africa, after Clicks to Africa, Bottom Naira, then Cash Envoy. So I've been working on Cash Envoy since 2007, but it eventually launched 2009. Problem with why it did for so long was technical. Cash Envoy is actually a very, very robust payment platform, and just building that stuff was so much work. and I was its student around, I think I graduated 2007. So it was just that era where I was leaving school. I had some part 2 developers that were working on the project, and those guys almost killed the project, to be honest. Like, we just kept pushing the launch dates. So eventually, I got to that level where I was frustrated, and I realized that I can't launch with these guys. I'd put the launch dates for so many months. So I realized that, because when I was a student, I used to write code too. I was a computer science, so I really do classes to write code, even though I was never like a very good coder. But I knew as a student, then the guys that were like your bosses when it comes to let's write the software. The guys that when you get stuck, you gotta meet. You guys may be in the same class, but those guys were already writing software, and So I just remember that the best guy I knew back then was the guy called Shegun. Shegun King. And the guy used to write was a real coder, and he already had projects, or the students already working for some companies, building softwares and stuff for them. So I went to Shegun and I said, "Hey, bro, how you did now?" And just the mind is the same in Lagos, and then we had just finished school. And I said, I have this project, and I want us to work on it together. And he looked at it and said, "Okay, I can do this. It's very interesting. This is how much I'm going to pay." And I said, "Hey, bros, I don't have shit. I don't have money to give you. Let's be partners." And basically, that was the beginning of Cash Envoy. We built Cash Envoy. The only money that we had back then was 75K, which I got from family again. I always say, get money from the fishes first before you go to the sharks later. But we pretty much just started Cash Envoy with nothing. It was just 2 of us. We got family connection. We got an office in Yaba. We had just 1 table, and then later we had 1 employee, so it was 3 of us. And then Shegun went abroad for his master's, and then became 2 of us. And it was just very, very humble beginnings.
This was still 2007.
This was 2009 now.
Okay, so 2009. Okay.
Yes. So very humble beginnings. During that period as well, when I had finished school, I finished 2007 when I got out of the house, mostly because I was already working on Cash Envoy. And, the way it was with parents mostly, when you're done with school, so next thing you're supposed to do is you need to get a job, so they want to send you to this person or send you to that person, or, you start applying for jobs. But I wasn't doing any of that. And they're like, "Why are you not looking for work?" And I'm like, because I'm ready. I already have my business, I'm building something called Cash Envoy. And they're like, "What's that?" And I started explaining that, people can use it to pay over the internet. Nobody, my parents were just like, "What's this guy talking about? This guy is lazy. He's not willing to work." How would you just finish school and you're not looking for work and you're saying you're starting a business? And when we say explain the business to us, it's not even
Okay. It was way ahead of their time.
Yes, so I had a lot of, and around this time, 2009, even the business was way ahead of its time, because back then we had just 13 Nigerian websites that were commercial websites. And I know for a fact, because we did our research. So we had companies like Bring It Bay. We had 3 Stitches. The only one that I think still exists today is owned by what is guys called now? Prague, loaned by Prague. I can't remember their URL anymore, but they're still running online. So even though they run physical stores as well. But so it was just 13 sites, and we just thought that, hey, the internet is booming, and we're going to do this, and a lot of people are going to sell on the internet. And when they want to sell on the internet, we would already be in place, so we just become the de facto choice, So that was what led us to build that. It used to be so tough back then. So eventually, because of the pressures from home, I had to move out from the house. I moved in with a friend that had a supermarket. Back then I was running. At that time, was the biggest supermarket in Ikorodu. And he wanted me to come and help run it because you already knew that, I had a lot of business sense. I'd done a lot of businesses, even some businesses I didn't mention, by the way. But, so I had a track record. So I was like, hey, come and help me run my supermarket. So which I was willing to do for free, but even though he agreed to pay me. But the money, at that time, it wasn't really about the money. My salary then was 30K a month. And sometimes as well, I advise people that when you want to do something, don't really bother about the salary. So I tell, for instance, someone says, I want to open a supermarket like ShopRite. I say, why don't go and get the job there? You don't even need to collect salary. But you need to understand the process. You need to understand how to keep inventory. You need to understand how to make sure that you don't steal your inventory. You need to make sure to understand how to source for goods, so that it's not like when you now start, you're now learning certain things. So for me, it wasn't about the money, because I already had a vision. I knew what I wanted to build. So I took it anyway, and it gave me the room to move away from home. And when nobody was putting pressure on me to look for work anymore, I could focus and build. And I started working, on the product, trying to get the product to market. I know there used to be very tough days. There were days that I didn't want to transfer money to go to work. It was that bad. No money. Like, I'm supposed to go to the office in Yaba, there's no transfer money. And so I went through all that phase. And yeah.
And how long did it continue for before you finally made some headway?
Well, that period was, of course, it wasn't like you're doing the business and you're not making any money. We're making money, but it wasn't the kind of money that you can say, hey, I've made enough money now and I'm ready to get married, or I'm ready to. It wasn't that kind of money. It was just like we're making pocket change. Let me put it that way.
So like how much? Can you talk about it?
I can't remember the specifics, but I think, one thing that I had going for me was because I wasn't really from a poor family, it never really got that bad. Despite the fact that doing all the hustle, I was still able to buy a car. I had a car before in the past, maybe as a student, that I sold. And then I was able to buy another car for around that period, I bought my Audi. I bought it for my cousin. And I remember that my dad gave me about 50% of the money. And then I had to cough up the balance 50%, So it was hustling times, but, it wasn't like I was like dead broke. Of course, there were instances where I had dead broke periods as well. There's one story that is very difficult to forget, where I went for a meeting in VI. I went to actually go and present to an investor, about, come and give me money on this, what I'm trying to build. And I drove my car, was an Audi A4. There was no fuel inside, but someone in VI was owing me money, someone that was working. So the plan was I was going to drive to VI. I was going to do this presentation in the morning. Once I leave that presentation, I go to my friend's office that is owing me money. And the money is not like correct money, maybe like 3K or 4K or something. I collect that cash, buy fuel, I come back to the mainland, So I drive all the way to VI. I go and make this presentation, and it didn't work out. Anyway, the investor told me I was too early for them. And then I go see my friend and he says, guy, I don't have your money. I won't be paid, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, I realized that I'm in the car in VI. I need to get back to the mainland where I'm based. I didn't have fuel in my car, So I go very spiritual. And I'm like, God, you need to get me up. And then I get a third mainland bridge. And I just keep pushing. And like I'm looking at the fuel tank. The fuel tank is telling me I'm on zero. The fuel light has been on since as I was going to VI, the fuel light had come on. So I went to VI. So I'm on third mainland bridge and I'm driving, and the only fuel in the car is just, maybe blood of Jesus or something, just pushing the car. And, I just keep praying, and I actually get to, I can't remember which one it was now. If it's MRS that is first or mobile, that's on third mainland bridge when you are getting now into the mainland. That key to access. There are like 2 filling stations. That was really where my faith could get me up to. Like, I couldn't, immediately I saw that filling station, the prayer just became, God, let me get to that filling station in front there. And immediately I got there, I couldn't risk it anymore. So I just parked into the filling station. And I got down and I started actually begging. So people were coming to buy fuel. And I'll be like, good afternoon, sir. It's any about I need to buy fuel in my car. Nigerians are not nice, so people do help me.
Wow.
Nigerians are not nice. Eventually, someone did, and it was just 200 naira.
Wow.
But then I think fuel was cheaper than it is now. It was expensive then, but it was cheaper. So I think maybe with 200, I could buy maybe like 3 liters or something. And, I spoke to maybe like 6, 7 people, before one person gave me 200. I was like, these guys are not even nice at all. Like, I'm wearing shit and I'm tucked in. And I'm like, please give anybody to just buy a little fuel in my car. And everybody was just waving me away, But eventually one guy gave me 200. So I bought like 3 liters or thereabout. And then, I could get them. But those are just part of those stories that are nice to tell now. But back then, it was like, I just went through something like very, 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 very dramatic, But yeah, so really...
Was this still 2009?
No, this would have been around 2012.
Oh, okay. So between 2009 and 2012, you were still trying to find your feet.
Just finding my feet. Now, the crazy thing is sometimes during that period, it felt like, it felt really bad. It felt like, we are just hustling and things were not really working out in that sense. During all this period as well, I got a CBN license, which was fantastic anyway, because I didn't know anybody in CBN.
Yes, I learned you had to go present to CBN for a no objection policy correct. Or something. How did that happen?
So while trying to build the product, there was something that helped me during that period, which sometimes people still ask me that, sometimes when you want to give up, what do you do? So I'd gone through this process where things are not really working out. I don't have the traction I want. And I'm like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to give an example now. We're in June. So I say, this is June 2020. I'm going to stop doing this current business, as an example. December 2020. Like, I'm going to quit because there's no traction. But when I quit in December, I need to make sure that I did everything possible to make this business succeed. And the business didn't succeed, not because I gave up, not because I didn't try enough, but because it was impossible to scale, more or less. So I would make that commitment to myself to say, I'm going to give in this extra 3 months, or this extra 4 months, or this extra 6 months. If it doesn't budge, then this business cannot work. So once I talk to myself and I commit to that, within those periods, when I start doing everything possible to make it succeed, all of a sudden things don't really start happening. And then a lot of times I even forget the deadline that I've given myself, because by the time that deadline gets there, I've already gone past it. Like, there's already a bit of traction enough to move me forward. So one of those things that I counted then was I realized that for me to be able to scale this business, I need big players. And then we didn't have, like I said, we didn't have a lot of people selling online. So the big guys then were aero contractors. They were one of the first guys that had traction with selling. If you actually, back then, if you go and buy your aero ticket to Abuja, if you pay cash, you pay like 15, 20K. But if you buy online, you pay like 6, 5, 7K. I don't know why it was that way, but they were like the main guys that were selling shit online then. So I had gone to aero contractor, I had gone to DSTV as well for a meeting, getting people to use Cash Envoy. And the feedback I kept getting was, you're not regulated. You need something from CBN. So I felt like, okay, if CBN was going to be it, then I had to get something from CBN. And I really didn't know anybody from CBN. And honestly, I was just checking the newspapers one day and I saw an event by EPAN, E-Payment Association of Nigeria, and guest speaker was supposed to be the head of the department, Payment and Service Department in CBN back then, Mr. Toloye. And I just looked at it and I felt like I need to be here. I need to talk to this man and let him know that, I need a CBN license. What am I supposed to do? So I get to that event. Of course, I kind of qualify. I wasn't a member then. Later, I became a member. But, so I more or less crashed that event. And I don't know, some things just happen. Like God, For some strange reason, I was on the same table with the CBN guy, I don't know why I was that. But anyway, it got caught. But interestingly, the guy didn't come. The man that was supposed to be the head of the director that was supposed to present that day, he didn't come. So he sent the representative. But as God through that way, I was on the same table as the representative, So we were sitting together, we already greeted, and then they called him to the stage. So he was like on the panelists, whatever, on the stage. And then, but yeah, he still had stuff on the table. And when he finished, he came down. I carried his stuff. I went to meet him. Some of my colleagues then, I had one of my schoolmates that was at the event as well. She said that she thought I was working in CBN because the way I was carrying the guy's bag and following him, she was like, oh, maybe we came together. But we didn't come together. I was just marking the man and trying to explain that, sir, I have a product, the web payment product, and I kind of need something from CBN. So he gave me his card and he said, come and meet me in Abuja. So that was really just it. So I went to Abuja to go and see him. And they gave me this list of all the things that I needed to have, which was a lot. But I came back to Lagos and I started putting things together, documentations, a lot of stuff. Basically, all the things that CBN wanted to see, what the security process is, all that stuff. I put everything together. And then I went back to go and present myself now and my other guys. There were 3 of us in total. We wore our suit and tie, looked very corporate, and we went to present. It was at that point in my life was very, very instrumental as well because, this was a period where I just maybe graduated school 2 years ago. And all of a sudden, I'm getting a letter of invitation to come and present in CBN. It just felt like, wow, this
How
is
old
massive,
were you then?
I would have been 26.
Okay. So it was massive for you that.
It was massive, So I go there. And one thing I kept telling myself, there were 2 things that I think saw me through that presentation. Now, anyway, I've gone to do more presentations since then. I've gone to do more presentations at CBN.
Okay.
But back then, 2 things that were for me. The first one was that my project presentation in OAU when I was graduating, it was a nightmare. Number one was that I was presenting. For some reason, that technology worked the day before. It was something about biometrics. It worked the day before. It worked that morning. And then I get into, the defense room, and the thing just wasn't connecting. It wasn't working. And then
Nigeria fucked up.
I don't know, there was lots of something. And then we had this very, I don't want to use wicked lecturer because now he's my friend. But back then, he wasn't my friend. And, the old departments used to be scared of him. So scared. Like, really, really scared. I remember one time, previous, maybe like, he was taking me a course in part 3. And I come into the class, and I told us that, if your phone should ring in this class, that is the end of your career in that department. And I was so scared. I was just trying to tell you how scary the guy was. I was so scared that my phone was off even before he came in. But immediately he said that, I removed the battery of my phone just to make sure that, because I was scared that this phone can be off, but it must not ring for any reason. So it being off wasn't enough. I actually removed the battery just to be sure that, my phone does not ring in class. Like that guy, it was that scary that time. So it was my project defense, and it just tore the whole thing apart, destroyed me completely, made me feel so irrelevant and insignificant. And, he more or less murdered me, you're coming back to do this project defense. There's no way you're going to pass. You won't graduate. This thing is terrible, 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 So I felt like, number one, as I was going to present at CBN, nobody was going to talk to me the way I'd already been talked to at that defense. I felt like I'd already gone through the worst. Confidence too was that I was going to present something that I had built. So I wasn't going to tell them how to run Nigeria's economy or how to fix the crisis or whatever we had in Nigeria. It was just, I had built a solution and I was going to present what I had built, and do a live demo and all that stuff. So those were the 2 things that gave me confidence. And, I went in there and they clapped for us. Back then, this was 2010. There was no OTP like we have OTP now. So it was, I don't know, maybe at that time they had seen OTP before, but, from the expression, they were like, oh, I got the OTP and all that stuff, we had built something that was good, and we could see the appreciation, so it was a very good presentation, and that was it. And, of course, we didn't get the license immediately. But,
okay. How long did it take?
We had to. I think maybe after that presentation, maybe another 6 months, maybe another 4 to 6 months, or thereabout. But yeah, it came out eventually. I had to do another follow-up. I had to. When it was so difficult, I had to crash another event, see someone else at CBN, and then that person started following up for me, and eventually came out.
This was still between 2009 and 2012.
We actually got the CBN license in 2011. So all the presentation in CBN was 2010, and then we got the license early 2011.
Okay. And within this period, there were moments when you wanted to give up.
Well, every time we have those moments, like back then, because this was, like I said, between 2009 to 2012. Well, let me see, between 2009 and 2012, or let me say 2011, it was 2 years of struggle, more or less. 2011 became easier, mostly because we raised the first capital I ever raised externally from an investor. That was 2011.
How much was that?
That was 2 million naira.
Okay.
That was when things started getting a bit simpler, or a bit easier, rather.
So what made this investment pitch different? How were you able to clinch the deal?
Oh, it was easy. It was easy, honestly, because they wanted me more than I wanted them. So it was easy. The concept, and like you learn every day, the concept back then was, you're going to start a company. You have to make sense. You're going to have market traction. You're going to make money, and you're going to use the money to grow. But the truth is that it hardly ever happens that way. And even when it does, it's so difficult, So in a lot of times, we need investment. Right now, when if you're starting a business today, things have changed. Right now, guys are starting business and they're raising money day 2, day 3. But this era I'm talking about, we didn't have VCs in 2009, 2010. There were no VCs, The only guys that had done the magic then and had raised, I think it was just those guys then. Maybe there were a lot of other coded deals, but the major one that everybody knew then was just Jobberman. I didn't even remember the Jobberman deal. It happened like a long time. It was around that period. So they were like the only major deal, back then. Nobody really knew anybody called VCs and so on in Nigeria. But yeah, so I was able to do that. Those guys, they came to me and they said, we want to invest in what you're building. And I was like...
So they came to you, you didn't go meet them?
No, they came to me.
How did they hear about you?
They were connected to someone I knew from Ife.
Okay.
So, and they were not VCs at that time anyway, in that context. They were just, people that they had set aside some money to invest in some small companies, and I kind of fell into that bracket for them.
Okay, so they came to meet you?
Yep. So it was probably, I think since then, interestingly, they were not they were not so, so investment happens in 2 ways. The easier type is when the investor comes to you, which has happened to me maybe twice or more. I'm not even sure. Sometimes you both go to each other, but like twice it has happened that the investor sought me out, reached out to me, and then we talk and we get a great deal. So those, when that happens, you're usually blessed, because the work you need to do is lesser, because the investor had probably done his own research to say, I like this guy. I like what these guys are trying to build. And then when they reach out to you, it's going to be a lot easier than when you are the one looking for money and you're going to them, But things started getting easier 2011. That was like the first time I raised. And then I think we didn't really eat it till we had to pivot, which I think is important for every business to understand. Another very important concept for every business, the idea and concept of pivoting, which is that what the idea that you set out to do may not always work. You need to be able to listen to the market and be adaptable. That is really what pivoting is about. But then pivoting should always, at the same time, always be within the same space. And that's really what is pivoting. So that you can apply the experiences learned in the first business into whatever you're pivoting into. So also something else that I got to realize sometime last year was, so I started getting a lot of speaking engagements for trainings in the industry. And, people that were calling me, and I mean institutions, I don't want to call their name, but, they felt like, let's call Lalu to come and talk about e-payments because they felt I had a deep understanding of the industry, So I go and I talk for 1 hour and, honorarium, maybe like a 50K, which I don't always ask for, but, sometimes I get 50K, 100K for talking. And, and I'm thinking about it that why are they calling me to come and speak at these events? It's because I have an understanding of the industry. But that understanding of the industry, I did not read it from a book. I was in the industry. What I'm trying to say is that all the years, like let's say 2009 to 2011 or 12, that I was really just hustling. Even though it was hustling, I was building a network. I had already developing relationship with switches, developing relationship with banks, developing relationship with, building these relationships that in later years, I was dripping from, but when I was doing that hard work, it felt as if there was no result. But the truth is that there is nothing in your life that you do that is wasted. In the future, you realize that all those years that I was doing this, what they call them is years of experience. It may have been that, we spent 2 years figuring things out, but what you've actually done is 2 years of experience, and I started getting paid literally for those years of experience. There's no time that is really wasted. Just whatever you're doing, just know that you're getting years of experience.
Okay. So 2011, you get the investment, you get the license, and then you started to pivot, like you said. So how did this happen?
Well, I think I was intrigued by a new technology that came out in 2012, which was in the same industry, and it was really just payments. And it was by Jack Dorsey, and it was in Nigeria last year. And he was founder of Twitter, so he started a company called Square. And the idea really is that my iPhone can do everything. I can take a picture, I can check the time. My iPhone should be able to receive payments as well. So started a company called Square, and it built a dongle that you connect to your iPhone and you can swipe your card and it gets, your iPhone becomes a POS. So that was the concept. So he launched that in 2012, and I just knew that I love this idea and I need to get it into the country, and I felt like, if I can get it into the country, number one, it becomes a complementary product because I then have online payments, I have physical payments, and I could bring them all together. And I started pursuing that concept of mobile point of sale, which is MPOS. And so that was pretty much it. And we couldn't get into the market till 2013. I think we were the first guys to get licensed by NIBS to provide mobile point of sale technology in Nigeria. There was someone that, so so that was the pivot. It was into mobile point of sale. And
how were you able to get the license?
So NIBS license, you need to, of course, there's the technical part and then the business parts. You submit an application, you actually build the application, the application that you want to connect to the NIBS Central switch and things like that, and then you pay some money as well. At this time, I was already talking to my second and third investor. Those investments came in around the same period, and the process was a lot easier. By now, we're already employing people. We had grown from 3 people to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7. I think we had about 7 people at that time, and so. There's a laid out process that you have to go through. So we did all that and we applied, we started building, we paid some money, and eventually we got the license to. What the license gives you the right to do is the license gives you permission to connect to the Nigerian Central Switch and do transactions.
Okay, so this was PayPad, right?
Correct, PayPad.
Okay, and this was 2012?
No. So Square launched in 2012. The whole process of creating an MPOS in Nigeria was a process on its own because we couldn't bring in a Square technology because in the US they swipe, meaning that they use the magnetic stripe of their card. But in Nigeria, we're already in Saturn, meaning that we use the chip on the card. So we're doing chip and pin. And at that time, a lot of countries in the world were not doing chip and pin. So what that meant was that we couldn't really import technology. We needed to come up with something innovative to be able to make it work. So even though we started working on the project 2012, we were not able to launch till 2013, sometime in 2013. And in fact, we didn't even really go. Maybe we had one or two merchants in 2013, but then 2014 was when we had a bit of traction on it.
Okay, so with Cash Envoy, you weren't exactly profitable, right? So you had to pivot to PayPad.
Correct.
Okay, and then it has started to make waves from 2014.
Correct.
Okay. Curiously, in 2012, then it was still one staff you had, or you had started employing more people?
In 2012, one staff.
Okay. So you were able to pay the salaries?
Yes. We didn't get more than one till it was 2013 that we started employing more people.
Okay. So 2014, sales started to come in. Then what happened next?
It was PayPad. Around that era, we had grown to like maybe seven or more employees. And it was basically because by then we had raised some money as well. So we had a bit of cash. It wasn't really much, but it was a bit of cash to get by. And life has started getting easier. But of course, it was still a struggle because you have to, you need to build something that works, So we came up with a model which won't require us to spend a lot of money, but still be able to go to markets. And the idea was simple. We're going to partner with banks because if we wanted to partner directly with businesses, because the truth was we are providing a solution for businesses. If we want to partner directly with businesses, you would realize that you need to spend a lot more money because like you're trying to reach your consumers directly through marketing. So you get to burn a lot of money in marketing. But we didn't have this kind of resources. So we went through the digital route, which was we partner with banks and then banks would deploy our solution to businesses. And we had this model where, because we're selling devices to the banks, we get paid upfront and then we make a little commission of transactions. So that was...
Was it easy to get the banks on board?
Well, we were lucky we had what you call first mover advantage. So it's not usually easy, but the first mover advantage actually went a long way for us. And the partnerships just kept coming from bank 1 to bank 2 to bank 3,
So by first mover advantage, you were the first in the market?
Yes, from mobile point
solution.
of view. Yes, mobile point of view.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
So that made it easier for us to take on the banks.
Okay. At this point, were you then profitable?
Yes. So 2014 was probably the first time we were profitable. Maybe on paper anyway, but then, the whole business was more difficult because when you work with banks, sometimes you don't actually get paid when you're supposed to get paid. So what that means is that you've made a sale. On your P&L, on your income statement, it looks like you are making a profit. But the truth is that you've not been paid, So you now go through this period where your cash flow is a mess, because at the same time, you need to keep paying salaries, you need to keep paying all that stuff. But meanwhile, your money is tied with this bank or that bank. And, so it was a big mess. And, which is why they always tell you that, cash flow is the most important because when there's no cash flow, the company is dead. But thank God that I've been through a lot of errors that, there was no cash flow and we didn't die. We stuck in and we figured it out, So I remember one in particular, we went for like 3 months, no salary, and so those are kind of things that when you're going through it, it's so difficult. Even for me as an employer, I'm not happy, because I'm at work, I'm seeing everybody at work, and I'm like, I haven't paid these guys for the last 2 months, and it's not that I don't want to pay them, but we don't have cash, because we had sold to company A and company B and it's not been paid. So those are just some of those realities that people go through. And I think that's what helped during that period for me was mostly transparency. So I was very open and I let my people understand that this is the reason why you've not been paid. This is where the money is. The money is stuck. However, we have assurance that the money is coming out on this date. So all we just need to do is manage till we can get to this date. And then number two was, I came up with this idea of office lunch, which so they will still do. And the idea is that, if I can't at least give you money, put money in your pocket or pay for your transportation, I should be able to at least feed you. It was in the period where there was no money at all. I spaced out and started making sure that the company started providing lunch for every employee. So it was a tough period, but I think we got through it and I became better for it because, I really got to understand that, it was just a tough period, really.
When you say you became better for it, what do you mean?
So I think in terms of employee management, I learned the power of transparency. I also learned that, paying your people it should be basic. Like it's not a luxury. Sometimes I hear about companies that have not paid salaries for 6 months and for so long. I find it very difficult because, how do you want to build loyalty and all that stuff if you don't take care of your people? So I kind of understood that, welfare of your people is like basic. They should be like foremost on your mind to take care of your people, even if you have to borrow money to pay salaries, borrow money and pay it. I think I became better for it as a leader. And, since then, I've actually never gone through that kind of phase before. I've gone through phases where there's no salary. Don't get me wrong, but I will make sure that I pay it one way or the other.
In just a moment, Olaoluwa will be sharing how he had to shut PayPad down and pivot into what we know today as PayCenter. Don't go anywhere. I'm Oshaya, and you're listening to Origins Africa podcast. Hi, dear listener. If you love our show, please leave us a review on iTunes and Apple Podcast. You can also send us a tweet or comment on Instagram at OriginsAF. We love to read from you. Nopes, not later. Yes, I read your mind. Do it now. Thanks a lot. Also click the subscribe button and share with a friend. Let's make a difference together, one origin story at a time. Hi guys, welcome back to Origins Africa podcast. I'm Oshaya. So between 2014 and 2015, PayPad was growing. However, Olaoluwa realized that it wasn't the business he wanted to be in.
At that stage, I knew that business was not what I wanted to be in, which something else that people miss as well. So I realized then that the business that I was doing was not my strength. So let me try and explain that. Number one, I didn't like the business because cash flow was a nightmare. Number two was that by default, I'm actually an introvert by default. And I'm happy to be an introvert anyway. But then when you are doing a B2B business, that is, I'm selling to the bank, so it's a B2B business. When you are doing a B2B business, it is not really for introverts. It is for people that like to build relationships, people that like to mix, people that want to do certain things that were not my own natural strength. And I think the only way that you can know that, and this is also part of self-awareness, because I knew that I don't have the strength, even though I could do it, so I could go out there, build relationship with the banquet schools, pitch and do all that. But I knew that it wasn't something that I was doing with joy. It was something that I was forcing myself to do, because I have to do it for the business. It wasn't my strength. So I needed something that would be more of my strength, and I knew that it wasn't a B2B. B2B business, especially in Nigeria, it's strictly based on relationship. It's not, half of the time, it's not even about what you can do or what you can provide. It's more about who do you know. So I didn't want to play B2B. So I knew that, yes, we already have what we're doing. We already kind of understood this business. But number one, even though the business there was profitability, the cash flow was a nightmare. I also felt like the business had to be something that would be attuned to my natural strength, which wasn't B2B. Introverts shouldn't do B2B. It would be too difficult to sell. Except the only way an introvert can do B2B is that you get a partner that is an extrovert, and then you'll be fine, because your own shortcomings, the other guy can go and do those relationships, and you guys will be fine for it. So anyway, that was more or less how we went with PayPad up to 2016. Sorry, I said with PayPad, yes, up to 2016. So it was really just the bank businesses we're doing, partnering with the banks. So we partner with the banks, we roll out for merchants, and we get a bit of commission of the transactions.
Okay, then in 2016, there was another pivot.
Yes, there was. This one was the major one, because for number one, I decided to let go of that business, the business I was running before, and start a new one.
Because PayPad?
So, yes. So
when you let go, what do you mean?
I decided I shut it down. I actually shut down my old business.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I decided to start again. But the only difference was that I wasn't starting from scratch anymore. I was starting from, where more or less like where I'd stopped, So, and, what we decided to do, what we pivoted into is what people know today as PayCenter, which currently is one of the topmost agent banking platform in the country. I think maybe right now, maybe it's like number 3 or thereabout, but I know that in the next few months, we would be number 1. And when I say agent banking, is a solution that provides access to financial services, and for me, the way we went into this, it wasn't for us. It wasn't like Olaoluwa sat down and came up with a beautiful idea. That wasn't it. It was the market that led us into it, because what we were doing from PayPad was that we were giving terminals to merchants to use to receive payment in their shop. However, we realized that some of those merchants, especially the ones outside of Lagos, were doing something else entirely with our terminals. And what were they doing? They were providing cash, because we don't have enough banks in Nigeria. So the truth is, you travel outside of Lagos and you don't find banks. This is like common practice. If you are from any state in Nigeria that is not Lagos, anytime you travel to your home state, you would have experienced this before. You travel to whatever state you're from. It doesn't matter if it's southwest or southeast or south or not. You won't find the banks. All the banks, because it is not, economically viable for the banks to be in a lot of places. Because number one, setting up a branch is expensive. You need to employ graduates. You need to get the right internet. You need to provide security, all that stuff. So what you find is that all the banks are represented in every state. And sometimes even in the towns, but then they can't do more than one branch there. And that branch is going to be on the major road, which is like the bank road in that area, because all the banks, they like staying together. So that's because there's 2 mopos per branch, so they can share mopo. However, what it means for a lot of people is that for them to do any form of banking service, they all need to travel to bank. And, I also like saying that, Lagos is the only place where you move from Ikeja to VI, and it's not like you're traveling. Every other state, when you move like that within local governments, you're traveling. If you are moving from Abeokuta to Shagamu, you're traveling. If you are moving from Ogbomoso to Ibadan, you're traveling, So what it means is that a lot of people are cut off from financial services. So we discovered this gap, and we're like, what? You mean that there's an old town, with this much population, and they don't have banks, So we set out and we said, this is what we are going to do henceforth. And we this was like, it wasn't about us coming up with a beautiful idea and creating a product. It was about us realizing a problem and creating a solution. So it was completely different. And immediately we went to the market. The traction was instant, and since then, a lot of times when people tell me about their businesses, I'm always curious about what problem does it solve, not, what is it about? Because if I can understand the impacts of the problem, then I can compare it to your solution. And if it does make sense, you're onto something, because when you have a business that is solving a problem, the impact is way, way, way higher. So we had created something, and traction was almost instant, and we've been growing, from day by day since then.
Yeah, true. Because today now, I think you process about $2.5 million transactions daily. I think I read that somewhere.
But I would rather put it to naira. So today we do about 3 billion naira every single day. Dollars actually change. So in dollars, that would be today we are on 450. So that would be So today we do over $6 million every day.
Interesting. Okay.
And we're still growing.
Okay. Was it easy to shut down? Was it an easy decision to make shutting down PayPad? Because as you mentioned it, I'm still thinking about it.
Well, it wasn't a difficult decision, mostly because there are a lot of reasons why companies shut down. This one was intentional, so it wasn't difficult. If it was that we have to shut down, then it would have been a difficult one. But it was because we wanted to start on a new plate. We wanted to start afresh. It was a decision that we made internally, and so it wasn't difficult.
Okay, so what's the toughest decision you had to make?
Toughest decision I've had to make. That's a tough one. Nothing actually comes to mind. But what I do know is that nearly every day we make tough decisions. Like nearly every day, there are always this tough decision, that tough decision. Recently we fired someone that just had a baby. That wasn't easy. But we had to do it for the business. So like every day, you're making this decision, canceling this deal, starting this relationship. So
could I ask why you had to fire her?
It was a him,
Okay, him.
It was competence issues, But
okay.
But I was just trying to give an example of every day you actually make tough decisions. Maybe some tougher than the other. And I can't really think of anyone that feels like, oh, this is the toughest I've had to do. But I think maybe if I think more, maybe before the end of the call, if I remember something that was, pretty difficult to make. But
okay.
I think that as leaders as well, you always have to make decisions. That's the job. If you don't make decisions, you would you can't lead. So you need to take back as much input as you can, and then at the end of the day, your job is to then decide what you're going to do to move forward. Okay. So it took you about 10 years to, let's say, start reaping the benefits of the hours and work you put in between 2006 and 2016. Wow. I actually never thought about it that way, but you're very, very correct.
Oh, well, would many entrepreneurs still be that patient?
Oh, nowadays, people are not so. No. People are not. But then also it depends on the vision, and the passion on what you're working on. Entrepreneurs are different. Like there are guys I used to mentor that they're working on a business and it's really tough. And next thing, boom, they've relocated. And when they relocate, they're not relocating to go and do the business. They are going to go and get jobs. There are even guys that were entrepreneurs there in Nigeria, and boom, they've relocated and they've gotten a job. A lot of people give up on their dreams. Let me just put it that way. People have dreams and then, they give up. But I think that a key part of success is perseverance. And a lot of people don't have that. So, but once you can, if you have that, it will help you go a long way. And sometimes I listen to some entrepreneurs, and even just from their stories, I know they are going to succeed, and I won't mind investing in them, not because they have a fantastic solution, but because I'm listening to all the stuff you've gone through, and I know that you're still figuring it out. I know that you eventually get it. That's the way it works most of the time.
I think also because judging from or learning from your story now, also being able to discern when you need to pivot that idea that you have, as against sticking to the initial idea and trying to make it work. Do you think that's also key?
Yes, that is key. So I think for me, the key thing about pivoting is you need to pivot pivoting shouldn't be starting something new entirely. It should be something that all the years of experience that you've had, all the failures that you've had, that there are things that you can still leverage on to build something new. Because for everything that you do, there's always this what they call this now, this learning curve. So everything has the learning curve. You don't want to always be on a learning curve every time, because if you are pivoting to something next every time, it means that every time you always be on a learning curve. So you are going to make mistakes, right? So you pivot, but what you are pivoting to is not something that you are starting the learning curve fresh. You've already made your mistakes. The only reason you are pivoting is because you now have a good understanding of what the market wants.
So looking back now, what were some of your mistakes?
So generally, for me, as a rule, I don't dwell a lot on mistakes, because I like thinking about it as, these are things that I do that I have to. There are things that I have to learn from. So I have to go through this and learn from it. So sometimes I think about maybe I could have managed certain people better in terms of employees, So those are part of, sometimes I think about certain employees and I'm like, that guy had a potential in this. So, but, it wasn't actually mentored right to be able to deliver certain potential. So there are some mistakes from that as well.
Aside people management, any of the mistake you want to share?
People management, I think that maybe, and one of the investment deals I'd done in the past, maybe I could have negotiated it better back then. Sometimes I think about that as well, like, wow, I should have negotiated that deal better. So I felt like I agreed to a lower valuation at that time, but all those things, they come with experience, so I've gone through that. I can't make those kind of mistakes again. And so I don't really dwell on mistakes that much. I take it as they happen. The ones I can quickly correct, I correct, and I move on.
Okay. So within this 10-year period, when would you say you felt most alone?
I would say maybe during the period where, things weren't working out. When things weren't working out, I would say that period between maybe like a 2009 when we launched to a 2011 maybe. Of course, I had my partner Shegun, but it was pretty much just two of us, with me especially carrying the bulk of it. So maybe that was the period.
What helped you that period? Where did you draw strength from?
I think it is, first of all, just the strong belief that I have, the conviction that I have that, I had to succeed. I think that conviction is a fantastic one. I believe that I'm really going to succeed. Part of what you said about having doubts, I don't have those doubts, So I just know that I am going to succeed, and I had this vision of what I was going to create, and I was going to work out, and I could imagine and I could see it working out beautifully, So I more or less just used my vision to get through that, in terms of my personal vision of how this thing was going to end up to be successful at the end of the day.
Okay. What are your fears or insecurities today?
But business-wise, it would be the major risks that we face, which is there are usually maybe just two of them. The first one is regulatory, because sometimes regulators, they're their job is not to really care about you, so they can just come out tomorrow and set one or two laws or create a policy that just messes up, your business and your cash flow. But the good thing is that because we already know that these fears are there, we're already looking for ways to mitigate against it. So regulatory issues are one. The second would most likely be just, market threats, and then I would say three. So second one is market threats from most likely maybe from a competition that currently doesn't exist. Maybe like a telco coming into the space aggressively with endless cash, things like that. I think that you think about that. It's like having a shop that is doing well and all of a sudden Walmart moves to the next streets from your shop. Your business is in trouble, So threats from competition is there. And I think that the biggest one is probably maybe like the fear of the unknown in terms of innovation, because we're in technology, certain things come out and they can just take you out of business just like that. So you need to, and I think the solution to that is just really being paranoid. So take, for instance, let's imagine that we're in Brazil and we had a mobile app solution for financial services. And all of a sudden, Facebook just launched payments on WhatsApp in Brazil. The impacts that would have on your business will be very, 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 very thick, depending on the amount of loyalties that you've been able to build in your solution anyway. But, those are fears that you need to really think about because technology is really moving very fast and some things can just happen and today you are relevant, tomorrow you are not relevant. So that fear of the unknown is always there. But I think what I do is, there's this concept of, only the paranoid survive. You have to be paranoid, not paranoid in a negative way, but just always looking over your shoulder, always understanding what is coming, what the competition is bringing, and, be able to process all the information and try to build something against it and make sure that, you have what they call, what people call a moat, like you have a defensible position.
So looking back now, if you were to start again, what would you do differently?
I think maybe right now, the easiest way to build a startup right now and get funding is to actually finish from an Ivy League, or if you don't even have to finish, just drop out from an Ivy League school. So what would I have done differently? Maybe the only thing I would have done differently, but the thing is, life is tricky that way. Maybe if I had done that, maybe I would have gone in different paths, but you never know. We would have been trying to get into an Ivy League school. I mean, like rather than going to OAU, maybe like any of those schools. Once you finish from any of those schools, fundraising is always like just like the snap of your fingers. People are willing to give you money because of, you went to certain schools and finished from certain schools. So I think maybe that would have really helped in the process of, I would not have suffered as much. But then at the same time, if I had done that, maybe I would not have actually gone the path that I went, or maybe my path may have been derailed, so you never know. So I think that, my life has been intentional. And I have this strong conviction that God has a plan for me. And I tend to just do my part, So one part of the prayers I used to pray, and I think I still pray it every now and then, is, I have to live a life where my life can touch billions of lives, and if as long as I feel like I'm doing that, I think like I'm doing the right thing. And so take for instance, a lot of people are praying, right? Nigeria is a very religious country. People pray a lot. But God never throws money from the sky or it doesn't happen that way. There are going to be certain people that are going to be used to bless other people. And every time I pray that I want to be that medium that, God is using to touch all these other lives. So, and I think that I'm on course. The company that I currently run, we provide a means of livelihood to over 20,000 people currently. So I feel like that is impact. I love what I'm doing because I'm creating ways for people to earn a living, So it's something that I enjoy doing. It's something that I want to keep doing. So I really don't dwell on regrets. And maybe I would just have done the same things I've done, but I would just have wished that maybe it was a bit easier.
Okay. So what has been like your most inspiring moment on this journey?
That's a tough one. Most inspiring moment. All right, so I think that I don't also have one inspiring moment. I think that for me personally, I get eye on success. I get eye on results. And I always go and look for them. I look out for them. There are times when things just feel a bit tough. They're going through this. You're trying to sort this. Why you're trying to sort this? Something else is seeing you at the door. Once I go through all those periods, what I'm just looking for is, and I won't tell my team every time. Sometimes I say, I just need a win. I need a win. I need somebody to come through and someone says, oh, you guys just did this. Or maybe CBN just approved something for you. Or, I am always looking for one win or the other because I live off those wins, I live off success, So sometimes I intentionally go out and say, I need a win, from anywhere. And we celebrate the tiny victories. It's always very important to mark it and say, hey, we just signed up 20,000 agents. We're going to celebrate it so that, we just mark it that way while we plan for the next one. So we celebrate a lot of minor victories. So, and I'll keep doing that because I think that, those things inspire me to do more.
Okay. What did you have to learn the hard way?
I think that part of the biggest things or the hardest things to learn is fundraising. Some people have it, I don't know, some people feel like they're gifted, they just know how to talk to the investor and the money comes, but for someone like me, I think that I had to learn it the hard way. Fundraising didn't come naturally. It was so much hard work, so much hard work. I had to get out of my comfort zone, make it intentional that, I need to spend more time trying to lobby investors, trying to so I think those are one of the things that I struggle with, but pretty much I have a decent time of it at the moment.
Okay. What do you wish you had known or you had when you were starting out?
I think something that would have been scary to know was how hard it was going to be. I think that would have been scary. And then sometimes, sometimes you get inspired by other people's story. There's a book I read, The Acting About Actings, is by what's that guy's name now? Horowitz. The Acting About Actings. Anyway, the key message it's an American book. And, the guy eventually sold his business for $16 billion. But the issue was the guy went through so much to build that company. And when I read that story, I was inspired because, I felt like if someone is going through this much suffering in the US, he's in the US and he's struggling to raise money in the US, then it's fine if I'm struggling to raise money in Nigeria because Nigeria is like way, way, way worse. So I just felt like, so sometimes we need to get all those kind of minor doses of inspiration to be able to help you grow. But something directly that I wish that I know now that I wish I knew then was I think I more or less learn every day, and I just take it as part of the journey.
Okay. Yeah, the question that I wanted to ask then was, I think I read somewhere that you also had the fear of what if you were wrong?
Oh yes. Yes, but of course, so that fear is there. But then
Could you talk about it? What do you mean?
I think that, every day since then, I have more or less outgrown that fear. And I am still, when I actually made that statement, I was actually dependent on the point where my business was at, because I had promised my employees that this was what we were going to be. I had promised the investors this was where we were going to be. I'd put a lot on the line in that, and over time, I've been able to prove that, I'm not wrong. This is going to work out. So more or less, I've outgrown that fear. And if there was a new fear now, it was probably like the fear of the unknown, the fear of what is coming, but I can't see. Because the things I can see, I'm more or less prepared for them. So right now, my biggest fear is the fear of the unknown.
Okay. That's great. And now you're living your dream, I think. So what would you say?
All right, so let me correct that. Not yet. So the concept of success is very relative. What that means is that what you consider success may be different from what I consider success, which is different from what the next person considers success. And everybody's striving for success. But from where I stand, I'm on the right path, but I'm not yet there. So I'm not yet living the dream. I'm just trying, I'm working hard, more or less.
Okay. But where you are at the moment, what would you say are the not so good sides or the aspects you don't like about it?
Well, to be honest, there are a lot of challenges at where I am, but then you tend to understand that is the job that you choose, and for me, can it really be easier? I would just say that, a while back, I read a book that had a concept of wartime and peacetime CEOs. And the book was trying to explain that for every business, there are certain times that, what you need is a peacetime CEO, which is mainly the guy that helps the business get to the next level. But then there are some special cases where you have wartime CEOs where, there's a time of crisis, there's a time of things are not working out, and there's a particular type of skill that is required to get through that period as well. And sometimes when I think about that concept, I think that, all my life I've been a wartime CEO. There's never really been a time of peace. It's always from one battle to the next battle to the next battle, even till now, So it would have been nice, occasionally to be like a peacetime CEO. But yeah, we take what we get and make the best out of it.
Okay. What daily habits or practices do you observe today that have been helpful in your journey?
I think the biggest one is reading. Yeah, a lot of people say, readers are leaders, but the truth is that as a leader, honestly, you need to read, because when you read, it kind of opens your mind and it expands your mind, and it also gives you the opportunity to learn from what other people have learned without having to. Seriously, life is short. You actually can have every experience by yourself or by people but reading allows you to tap into the knowledge of others and the experiences of others. And then you can put all that together and help you make better decisions, help you plan ahead. So I think that if I was not a reader, I would not be the person I am today. I think that, more than anything, I think that reading has been very, 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 very important in my life. Right now, there's no time in my life that I'm not reading a book. Immediately I finish the book I'm reading, I'm going to pick on now. If I'm busy, I may not open that book for 2 weeks. But there's a book that is always in my bag that I'm reading at every point in time. So yes, reading has been very crucial to me, and in terms of my development as well.
What book are you reading now?
It's called at the moment, it's called Black Box Thinking, and it's about learning from mistakes, So the black boxes, the concept is from the aeroplane, so when the plane crashes, how all the errors are analyzed and then used to improve the airline industry, more or less. So black box thinking, and, is about, you need to start thinking, even as a business, to say, when certain things go wrong, we need to be able to understand thoroughly what went wrong and then put processes in place to make sure that, those things don't go wrong anymore.
What's the best advice you've gotten?
I think one of the best ones, maybe not the best, but one of the best ones is the fact that being an entrepreneur is hard. When I wanted to start out, when I after my part for IT, I went to see when I wanted to start Cash Envoy, I went to see the CEO of where I did my IT. So I went to see him and I said, I have my business plan, I have all this, and I want to start my own business. And he told me, Olaoluwa, this stuff is hard. Don't just think that, because, it just feels nice to say, oh, I'm going to be a boss, I'm going to start a company. Like, it sounds easy, but it is hard, And I think I like the advice, and I people need to understand that it is hard, It's not easy at all. So I think that once you understand that it is hard, you already have that mindset that you're entering the battlefield, so you're better prepared than when you think that, oh, you're just going to be fly and then it doesn't work out.
What's the biggest challenge with your role now?
The biggest challenge in my role now would be making sure that everybody understands the vision. So the thing is, like I said, every day you grow, you develop. When you run a company that has 20 employees, most of the time, you would know the name of course, you know everybody's name. You know the name of everybody's child. You even know the dates of their child's birthday. You guys are most likely on the same page every time, working in tune, trying to build something great together, because it's a small thing. You guys are on the same wavelength. You're so in tune. But then immediately you start growing and you start getting to 30, 40, you lose that connection. You start having people that work for you that you don't even know their name. Like, you don't know their name, but you guys work in the same company. Maybe you've heard their name before, but, you have no idea when their birthday is. You have, and then when that happens, you start having disconnect. And people, not everybody is sold on your vision anymore, So that is probably maybe my biggest challenge now. But of course, I'm always working to fix, which is really the solution to that is, building leaders and making sure that you have leaders at every step of the way that can be in sync with your own vision for the company, so that vision can somehow get to spread through. But I think that, that is the biggest challenge in growing a big company and making sure that everybody, no matter what job role they have, no matter how far the chain of command is, that they understand the vision. I think that would be my biggest challenge at the moment.
Interesting. In the last 1 year, what would you say was one of your big failures?
I would say starting Cash Envoy before its time. In everything in life, there is like time and chance for everything. And there is actually a concept of being ahead of your time. Honestly, you don't want to be ahead of your time. You're not going to make any money. You don't want to be too early. At the same time, just the same way you don't want to be too late. You have to come at the right time. I think that Cash Envoy was a product that came way, way, way ahead of its time. E-commerce in Nigeria didn't start scaling until Jumia and Konga came into the markets. And that was 2012, around that era, 2012, 2013, but Cash Envoy had come so many years before that. And, it wasn't, if we had started Cash Envoy at the right time, we would have been able to fight better in that space than when we did. So I would say maybe that was one of the things that we didn't get right.
But how do you know the right time?
See, that's life, right? That's life. The market decides, honestly. The market decides. So you need to be able to be bold enough to try and push your product in the market. And you need to be able to listen effectively to the market. And then you will know if you're at the right time or not.
Okay. What's your best productivity tool?
I would say Microsoft Teams.
Okay. If you were a type of food, what would you be?
Trying to think about that. I've never actually thought about that before. If I was the type of food, I would something nice to eat, maybe like a shawarma.
Okay. What's one food you wish didn't exist?
One food I wish didn't exist. Maybe olives.
Okay. So what's something you're curious about today? What are you researching about the most?
Building a world-class customer care team.
Okay. If you were in my shoes, what would you ask yourself that I haven't already?
I think you've actually done a pretty good job. You've done a very good job, honestly.
So there's no question, or there's nothing you'd want to say that maybe I didn't ask?
No, you've done very well.
Okay. What's your advice to the listeners?
All right, so I would say, find the right vision. You didn't have to be an entrepreneur, just find the right vision for your life. So the vision for your life, it doesn't have to be you being an entrepreneur. It can be you even being an employee. But just find the right vision for your life, and a vision that you yourself can buy into and you can always work towards. So I like to say that, I have this vision of what my life should be, and wherever I am, so whatever spot you are, you need to be able to, even if it's not going to be possible, even if it's not realistic, but you need to be able to connect the dots from where you are to where the vision that you want to achieve is. If where you are, you cannot see any connection to where the vision is, then you're in the wrong place. So you need to change your location. But the idea is, whatever point you find yourself in life, you need to be able to connect it to the vision that you have of yourself. So you need to create the vision, a vision that you believe in. It doesn't have to be realistic. What I mean is, it doesn't have to be believable to everybody, but it has to be believable to you. And it has to be strong enough that, you can buy into it, and you can even convince others to buy into it. And then find your way there. Make sure that you're on the right path to get there.
Okay. Looking back now, wanting to be the richest man in the world, how would you say you're doing today?
Well, I would say that the biggest problem I have is that I am in Nigeria. But, despite that, we'll figure out a way to make it work. Because being in Nigeria means that, number one, you don't have the best markets. So what I mean by the best market is what you have is like a Nigerian stock exchange. You don't want to list, like, the capitalization in that market is not really fantastic in that sense, compared to maybe the London, the Hong Kong, or the New York. So that's, the first issue in Nigeria. The second issue is the currency devaluation. So you're making naira, but the truth is that every now and then you're actually getting poorer, no matter how much naira you're making, because by the time you compare it, the US dollar value to the naira you're making, you realize that you're actually way poorer this year than you were last year, on that international level. So being the richest man in the world and being a Nigerian, doing business in Nigeria is not an advantage at all. So those are part of the challenges that we have. But what can we do? We're going to make the best of the situation we're in.
Okay. Is that also where expansion comes in?
Definitely. So expansion comes in. Also, the plan is that at some point you need to look for how to port your business, to a foreign-based business where you can have access to bigger markets. Because at the end of the day, being the richest man in the world is down to what people think that the value of your business is worth. So Jeff Bezos being the richest man in the world is because the shares of his company keep going up. And that is because of what the people think that his business is worth. So you have to be able to be in the right market where certain things will be able to impact you, in that sense. So, yeah, but, even the point is that the truth is that even if I don't make it, it doesn't matter, because I would work so hard to make it that wherever I find myself, we're pretty decent.
Okay, that's good. How's COVID-19 impacting your business?
No complaints. So we are one of those businesses that you call a needed service. What that means is that, people are always going to transact, because what we do is we're a medium for transacting. And as long as, if there's a pandemic or not, people are going to transact. And as long as people are transacting, we are still in business. So no complaints at all.
So the lockdown didn't affect you guys, your agents not needing to go out and stuff like that?
Of course, there were some challenges with agents being able to access cash. But yeah, it was expected. We still did very well during that period. So no complaints.
Okay, that's great. Who would you like me to interview next?
So off the top of my head, I can actually introduce you to my brother. We're actually from an entrepreneurial family, so we have two boys doing a lot of things. I'm in the tech space. He's in the agri space. His name is Olaoluwa Awojoodu.
Okay.
Yeah, so exportation of commodities, and he has a good story as well.
That's Olaoluwa Awojoodu. He's the co-founder and CEO of eSettlement Limited. Thank you for listening to our show this week. If you liked it, do leave us a review, a comment, and share with your friends. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend and to tell another friend. We would also love to read from you. So please, do send us a tweet or leave a comment on Instagram at OriginsAF. You can also write to us at originsafricapodcast@gmail.com. Remember, do subscribe at wherever you get your podcast: Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud, amongst others. Join us next time as we have a chat with Olaoluwa, the founder and CEO of Arami Essentials. Our sound producer this week was Tumisha Jani, and the theme song was composed by Just Ritimi. I'm Oshaya, and you've been listening to Origins Africa Podcast. Bye for now.
My father told me life is not a bitter